off like, Wild West in it, six shooting everywhere, 100% tariff. You listen to what I say. And these nations have gotten quite advanced in their cooperation over the senile 4-year period we've had here. So they're up and running with their trading mechanisms and their interswaps between themselves outside the dollar. That's what's so frightening to Trump and the whole Americana thing here and the Western G7 nations is they've made enormous inroads while everybody was asleep at the wheel or purposely asleep at the wheel in the last 4 years. And then to come out and say you have to do exactly what we said, this is the same old BS that got us 70 years of, military industrial. So now what happens? Trump comes out and says, no, you need to 100% come right back to the dollar. And how dare you do it? If you don't, you can't. And we're going to charge you 100% for everything. And you just saw what China did. They just Trump carded. Well, I'm sorry, not Trump carded, but ace carded. No pun intended on that. Bam, right on the table. We're not going to send you anything. Now this, if it begins like this and we get more of this rhetoric, like you have to do exactly what we say, or we're going to tariff you again, wait until the second nation does it for a different set of raw materials. Prodding Russia is one thing, but we need their nuclear material for our reactors over here for our own power in the United States. Now, what if they come and say, you know what? Zero. Because even though all these sanctions and all this, we're bad talking, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, they're still letting an enormous amount of materials come out of Russia because they have to. The rest of the world depends on it. And, all this bad, big bad talk, big stick talk, we're still importing uranium from Russia for our own reactors. What happens when that stops? Because see, there's a coordinated effort now to just cut us off and wall us off. Now, you got to realize these BRICS nations have come to it. They're walking through the valley of the shadow of death over hot coals right now. They're halfway there, and they're like, we're not turning around. They, in my opinion, are going to go through the pain point before they back off of their aligned nation of trading blocks. They're already a decent step into breaking away from the American boot stepping on the neck here. We just grew up. We're Americans. We were born into the system. And when you travel and you look outside and you're not just American centric, never travel outside the US, and you actually get outside and look to the rest of the world, we're not the very most welcome team. We've done so much damage to this planet, and people are over it, completely over it. Now, is it the vibrational changes off the sun, the frequency of the sun changing? And then, this is creating awareness where now people are starting to break away from systems. Pluto's into Aquarius. This is a 250-year cycle. We just entered into it just a couple of weeks ago. It's all about technological changes, governmental changes, structural changes. And here we are with all the BRICS was already evolving into this. And then somehow Trump thinks that he's going to reel the entire planet back in just on his words of, I'm going to tariff you 100%. Those kind of threatening words don't work any longer. Just throwing it out there. I know I'm stepping on a few political toes, like, how dare you talk? I'm looking at the actual real world picture. It's only going to take 1 or 2 more countries to say, we're not going to sell you your critical materials. You want to tax us 100%? Well, we're not even going to send it to you. Once the first one does it, China. Once the second one does it, Russia, no more uranium. And they already cut off and they blew up that one transmission station in Ukraine, which means there's no more gas going through Ukraine to Europe for the rest of the winter or years from now. They're starting to fire off the firewall. They're starting to sever it off. Those transmission stations were cash cows for Ukraine, and there was still gas going through, again, all this big stick. Well, you can't do it. But they're still sending all the gas from Russia through there over to. So it's just like, again, a smoke and mirrors, a whole it was smoke and mirrors theater. But now Russia said, you know what? Boom, that terminal's gone. We're not sending you any more gas. You can freeze this winter. And plus all that was stored there as well is gone. So what happens when Russia said, no more, no, your uranium's gone. Okay, that's the second one. Now, who's going to be the third, fourth, and fifth country that have something that we need critically that just say no? Now, we can't go invade everywhere and get our stuff back. So it's a very precarious line that we're walking right now of these threats of the big stick when there's a whole schoolyard of bullies behind there going, we're not going to listen to your big stick. You're one dude out here, maybe two. But there's 120 of us back here with sticks too. And this is where it gets kind of interesting because that whole, power play that existed in the 90s and the year 2000 and all this thing, our military is just atrociously undermanned as we sit here. And the whole landscape, which Ransom, I'd like you to talk to, I mean, the whole landscape of warfare shifted anyway. We're into drones and robotics and, this whole clunky behemoth pollutant. Everybody talks about global warming, but they never talk about running militaries across the planet for ages and ages and ages. Is anybody pointing the finger at the military? No, it's got to be you, your cows. It's you, you're eating beef. Well, wait, what about the aircraft carriers and all the refuelers and tankers and jets and tanks running around polluting everything? Never want to talk about that. And sure, don't talk about all the global shipping and all the container ships running around, burning their dirty bunker fuels and everything across the ocean to get you your bits of junk for Christmas. Don't talk about that either. That might hurt the bottom line of the corporations. But you need to eat bugs, dude. And you see, the whole charade is evaporating right now. That's what I'm saying. I think we're at the planetary shutdown with all these excuses built in. It was the bad people. It was the bad. They're the bad ones. I believe we're a dark winter and they're starting to shut the planet down. I don't know if you agree with that there, Ransom, but that's where I'm sitting today.
Well, I have kind of a dark outlook for the next couple years, and it's because of a lot of key factors. I missed what you said at the beginning because I lost the internet and the whole thing crashed there. So hopefully we're rocking and rolling now. But I believe you were talking about the real issue of all of this, all of the global warming propaganda, all of the threatenings of wars, all of it. It's about two things: food production, rare earth elements. That's the stage and evolution that our planet's going through because we're about to have something that I don't think anybody can see coming, or they really just can't believe it. It's a technological revolution unlike anything they can imagine. And we'll get into that. I have a bunch of articles pulled up. But you were talking about the rare earth elements, and I was watching the Tucker interview with, I forgot the Russian guy's name. I think he's like the Minister of Defense or whatever he is. It's the old guy with the glasses. He's kind of like Kissinger,
Lazarov,
but
yeah, I think.
Yeah. And he directly said in that interview and pointed to an instance that I looked up and verified. And he was talking about how that in Ukraine, they already had a deal with Lindsey Graham and other people from the West that they want those rare earth elements in Ukraine. And Russia's saying, we don't really care about that because we have enough of it. But we're going to take our strategic classic locations that we've had in the past back. But that's what the war is going to be about. It's because Russia doesn't want us to have it, and we don't want Russia to have it. We want it. China has just cut us off. Other countries are getting hip to the game about the rare earth elements, and they're looking into what they have, what they can do. And now the entire world is about to be separated down a monetary line. The whole world. And Trump said it. The Russians have said it. The Chinese have said it. You're going to either be with the BRICS or you're going to be with the U.S. petrodollar. And people are going to have to choose sides. And that's going to happen, I'm going to say, right in the first year, 2025. And maps are about to start changing. The resource battling is about to happen. Matter of fact, Mexico, being one of our largest trade partners, is going through a whole new renegotiation with the United States, and they're already taking it serious. They're worried about their food that we eat being tariffed. But they also want to buy American products that aren't marked up like 400%, which is the case. So you could go down to Mexico City and try to buy a pair of Nikes, and they're like $90. right? And you could get the same pair here for $35. However, for $35, you can feed a family of 10 at a decent restaurant, right? And that's how it sits now. You cannot do that here. No way, right? You would break the bank with 10 people at a restaurant here. But they know that we're about to start massive deportation. And they're already making deals. They don't want those millions of people put in their country. They didn't mind when they walked through, but they definitely don't want them placed in their country and their care. And I'll show you this article here. Mexico president will ask Trump to deport non-Mexican migrants directly to their home country. So we're about to see a second wave of mass migration, so to speak, in the reverse. And I've been seeing signs of that happening in Europe. And it's not that it's the answer to the mass migration. It's a new tool in the tool belt that they know they've used before in World War II. And that's tribalism. If you can get people feeling like they're victimized even by the governments that they're in, and some weird stuff's about to happen. It's inevitable. It happened in the Middle East. We're about to go to war with the cartels. The cartels are major players in the food industry, believe it or not. People think drugs, human trafficking. No. Think corn,
didn't you talk
avocado.
about avocados that one time? I hate to cut you. Didn't you talk about avocados that one time?
Yes, that's what it's all about. Who controls the food and the trade? And the cartels want a piece of that. So they're going to have to rectify this situation. And we already know where our government is about to go. And I hate to say it, not to ruffle any feathers, but once an agency gets an agenda and money to back it up and people are behind it, that agenda comes to an end, but the agency never wants to relinquish their power. So first we're going to have a wave of getting rid of criminals that have actually done, violent crimes. But then it's going to start becoming more petty until we're having the discussion. Do we really want to remove people that live here, work, pay taxes, spend money in the economy? Because there are two different types of immigrants. There are some that drain the system and some that add to the system. So the problem is we're going to be doing military operations in the southern hemisphere in the Americas and also in northern America. So in Mexico. And inevitably, that's going to cause collateral damage, which is going to cause blowback, and it's going to change the entire political trade monetization of things. The whole environment's about to change. And you brought up drones. People are so scared of drones right now. They're identifying actual, aircraft from the airport as mysterious drones and UFOs now. So people are starting to look up finally, which is a good thing. The problem is that people are so unfamiliar with the technology that has advanced without them, they don't know what they're looking at. And we're looking overseas, and what we're seeing with drone warfare is kill bots. And they are using a small percentage of the power that they now have as far as artificial guidance, identification, formation. All of that stuff is going to go into something that blows conventional warfare away. So if there is a conventional outbreak of warfare, say Taiwan, China, Ukraine, Russia, US, Mexico, there's already examples of drones being used to assassinate, surveillance, just, cause mass chaos by scaring people in metropolises where drones are humming through the city. They don't know where it's going to blow up. It's a lot like, when Iraq used to send the Scud missiles over to everywhere to scare everybody. He didn't have warheads. That was the problem. But now they don't need that. They have smaller things that can do more punch. And if you can imagine 100, 200 drones in formation coming into a city, all of them packed with high explosives, C4 or something better, PTEN or, I'm sure there's better stuff now in this newer arena of technology. but each one of them having a high explosives and possibly even dirty bombs. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of old medical equipment out there. No one's keeping track of it. It's full of cesium, like 134 and other stuff. It's very small and contained. And we're about to see massive food areas being destroyed by this kind of warfare. So we know the Ukraine region, and we know the Taiwan China conflict, and even other trade disagreements are all going to be about rare earth elements and who gets the food, when, where, and at how much. So things are about to dramatically change for everybody, and it's so chaotic. It's hard to like say, hey, this is going to happen or that's going to happen. However, the one thing we do know that's going to happen, AI will be at the control, not humans. They're going to be controlling the stock market, the trade, the war, all of it, and even to down to our behavior. And in the backdrop of kind of a populist freedom movement that's been happening, the people that are toiling in the background to create a complete surveillance state of the entire human domain, every last product, every last animal, every last human, is still being implemented. Even the poorer third world countries are implementing these spying programs, surveillance programs, and they're going to tie it into this two currency system. And you won't be able to trade with the other side. And if you do, you'll have a lot of people breathing down your neck. Were you trading with those BRICS people? Did you invest in this? And we've been seeing a lot of lawfare, and I think that's about to go down the financial route. And what I mean by that is massive amounts of lawsuits and new laws being passed to stop or promote certain kinds of credits, digital currencies, to control who gets to trade what, who gets to buy what. Cash is a thing of the past. It's still around now, but they are going to have a reason to get rid of it all at once. And I think that plays into what you've been talking about for a long time. That will be the instant devaluation of people's portfolios, savings, and 401ks. And matter of fact, I went across an article that said that there are more millionaires now from their 401ks that are going up right now. I don't know. That was a lot to throw at you.
Well, no, I mean, it is a lot to throw, but, if you would like to get our show notes, please head over to civilizationcycle.com. Although there is a DNS issue right now, but write it down, head over there, put in your email. We'll get you the show notes. I sent those out just before the show, 10 bullet points here of things we talked about tonight. We do run through a lot of information, and just a single one pager and the things that we talked about. So you can have that as a reference for you starting conversations or continuing to do your own research. Because, what Ransom was talking about here also, most of the $100 US dollar bills are not in America. Almost, I would say 95% of all $100 bills are overseas. It's very easy to find a brand new crispy $100 bill overseas. You try to find a crispy $100 bill here, it's much more difficult. Our money is in tatters. Tatters are, we're starting to look, some developing nations where they just never get new currency. You're lucky, you go through the ATMs, everything's got marks on it. I don't know if they're marking the bills themselves, but every time, I used to remember going to an ATM and you get in and it was all brand new 20s come out of there. Now they're all scrappy. There's rips in them. There's got those black pen marks all over it. It's as if they're marking all the money on purpose. And it just makes no sense why they're not replacing the currency supply unless they know, like you said, it's going to be going to zero. I wouldn't say zero, but to devalue greatly. And imagine the demoralization of that. You worked your entire life. You were obeyed every law. You invested like you were supposed to. You put away a certain amount, as a financial advisor said. You saved, and you're just sitting there going, "Oh, I got $2 million in my account. I'm so tired of working. I'm just going to use this $2 million, bro. I need a break. I'm done." You tell your boss to F off, and then I'm going to go be a professional sunset watcher. And boom, your money gets wiped out. Then what happens? Can you imagine working your entire life and then you have everything stripped from you at the last minute like that? That would cause, I think, even more mental health issues than anything COVID related, probably times 100. Because people work their whole lives, all their life energy for that. Unless they're diversified out and they're holding gold and silver, which is, that can't really be taken from you except literally physically coming to you and grabbing it from you if they even know where you're keeping it.
Right.
Crypto is another thing a lot of people are on. By the way, Bitcoin to 103,000 today before magically dropping off to 92 on a liquidity pull there from the big players who wanted to free up a little bit and also take some short position gains on that, which goes right into, here's another thing, like South Korea, what occurred with the coup there. All right, so if anybody's familiar with the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, they have Bitcoin futures. And a while back on a Friday after they closed, Bitcoin just skyrocketed past, so I think it was 78,000 and went into the 83, 84,000 range. But there were a heap of orders right at that $78,000 range that never got filled. And it opened up, and they call it the CME gap, where there's a gap in price lower, and then the whole market ran away and it never came back down into that range for anything to actually get all those orders that wanted Bitcoin at 78,000 to get them filled in and sold to the people. But we're not talking about me and you, Ransom. We're talking about institutional money on the billions side. This coup in South Korea happens. Their cryptocurrency exchange drops the price of Bitcoin to 69,000 on that exchange over there.
Wow.
All the orders were filled here in America on a cross swap, and suddenly the very next day Bitcoin runs to 103,000. Now, are you telling me something is not fishy with that? So we're moving to this new financial system where coups are being planned to fill market orders for those who missed on the $1 billion range of filling orders at 78,000. Like, imagine the power that they had over a single person of whatever corruption there was or whatever thumb screws they had. What kind of dirt did they have on this person to have them call a coup to drop the price of Bitcoin on their trading market in there to fill CME orders? Maybe I'm looking out at this and finding something that's not there, but it's incredibly strange. The coup ends 3 hours. All the orders were filled an hour after the coup. Coup ends 3 hours later, and then whoosh, Bitcoin runs to the moon. I mean, you can't tell me that that's not related somehow. They call it the CME gap, and I encourage everybody out there to do some research on it and how those orders did not get filled and how they suddenly all got filled after the coup occurred in South Korea. So if we are moving into a different system here, and people are trying to make sure that they own the assets that are moving in the right direction, because we're being, if you want to, like you said, the tool belt of destruction is upon us. The builders of chaos are choosing another tool from the tool belt of destruction. Now, what you were talking about, the agendas going forward, and once an agency gets a hold here, now we've all been told that they're going to be rounding people up and putting them in camps, right, at a certain time for a certain political belief. You couldn't do that now. There's too much awareness. You start building these camps, there'd be like a tremendous amount of pushback. Are you going to round up the Democrats? Are you going to round up the Republicans? You're going to round up the independents. You're going to round up anybody who's talking about space weather. I don't know, whatever it is. Fill in your blank of the person to round up there. Everybody's got one, right? Building these camps to now house all these people that they need to deport. Nobody would blink an eye. And then suddenly there's going to be thousands of camps around the United States that before would have been absolute non-starters, because once the first one started to go up and social media caught onto that, and it was like, hey, this administration's building these camps, everybody's been talking about, they're starting to round these people up. If there were no deportation orders going on then, but suddenly now there's this whole deportation, they can build thousands of these camps, and once that program's finished, like you said, they're not going to let the reins of power go, whether it's this administration or the next. Those camps are already pre-built to there. You think some administration is not going to take advantage of that and be like our political enemies, whatever side you sit on, whatever belief it is? Maybe there's too many people who, and there's a lot of free minds because of social media. They want you back in the box and under total control. They want you to jump when you say jump, how high? Yes, sir. That's where they want you. They don't want you going, why would I jump for you, man? Any of those people in the world that we had described coming into this point, you were the enemy they were rounding up. But to build the camps, would have sent up so many red flags. There would have been so much hostility. There would have been so many governmental oversights. People would have been raiding the camps. It would have just been a Charlie Foxtrot, to say the least, for them to even try to implement such a thing. Not one camp, 10 camp, but building thousands, that never would have happened. Ever would have happened. There would have been way too many questions. Why are you building 1,000 camps, man? But now
they did, though.
Yeah, they did, and look how many more they can get away with. Yeah, they built a whole bunch. There was one there's a couple up here in Tennessee as well. They refurbished a lot of old military bases. I'm talking about building new ones on top of this. There's going to be a massive complex of these, things built during this, deportation effort here, and nobody will blink an eye. They'll probably applaud it, but they don't realize after that first wave is done, oh yes, there will be a second wave, and that's what I think you were getting into there. I mean, we're on a razor's edge here, man, of some people applauding what's going on. Yeah, I get it. All the problems were blamed on a certain group of people. Now that group's gone, and yay, everything's free, and now get this, and then our life's going to be great. This hopium for everything, except maybe the hopium is going to turn into your nightmare. I'm not sure, man, but I just seen a lot of things going on that don't make sense to me, why it's happening, and how so many people can just go blindly along with, just like, it's ridiculously blind on both sides. And I'm not saying I have like my third eye's blind, wide open, and I'm blasting through, looking through like infrared in my head and things. But I'm like, what I'm seeing is just the generality out there. We're getting hoodwinked through this blind patriotism here and this blind allegiance to an animal, whether it's donkey or elephant, and they think somehow because it's switched that everything's going to change. Man, our country, we've been getting our money eroded 2% per year since forever, and nobody ever really delved into that until now. You know why they're delving into it? Because we're going to change money systems. So now, end the Fed. Well, of course they were going to end the Fed. They need to end it. If you're going to bring in an entirely new system, you can't have the Fed around anymore. But, it was great then, wasn't it? Steal 2% of your money. Give the peasants a 1% raise. They'll be happy. But wait, 2% erosion of your wealth. Ha, 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 they're still losing 1%. They're so idiotic. This is the way these people in the back room sit and talk. You need a 3% raise just to stay ahead of inflation every single year. Nobody want to talk about it, but now it's time to end that system. I don't know, man. These camps, when they're built, they're not going to be just used once and mothballed. That's all I'm saying. And everybody out there cheering for the camps to be built and all these things to occur, I would encourage you to look at the misusage of such agendas through history. And I would encourage you to start back with Stalin and Lenin and see where that went, and see how Pol Pot did a good thing, and look at Mao and see how that went, and just roll down your list. And then see, go take it back to the emperors, go as far as you want back anywhere, and you're going to see this general trend gets all real popular in the beginning, and then all of a sudden, what was that 100 Flowers campaign in China after Cultural Revolution had run its course and it got too crazy over there, and then they're like, okay, we need peace and harmony. Okay, y'all come out and you can air your grievances against the government over here, and they kept tally for a whole year plus. And then what they did, they started rounding everybody back up again after that. They all thought, yay, we're all free now. We can speak freely against it. No, that was just to get people to come out in the open like they are now with a lot of thoughts, right?
Right.
So you can just see a repeat in history here, and again, it's going to step on some toes, and I know it will.
Well, let me throw you out some ideas here.
Yeah, please do.
Through the Obama administration, we built massive facilities that could hold up to 400,000 people. We hired foreign nationals to be the guards for them. No one ever went in there. There was conspiracy theories about what they were going to use it for. People forgot about it. That's in the past. Those places still exist. They've built a bunch more in the name of flooding the U.S. with people, basically. They would get them all together, get their biometrics, put them on buses, send them to cities. They were planning on changing the demographic. Unfortunately, the same system can be used in reverse. Those same buses can go back to those same facilities and start deporting people. Okay, that's cool. So what happens whenever you combine all these ideas? Who uses most of the cash? Well, it's criminal organizations that put their money into the banks, who then give credit to the citizenry and all of their money is tied up in zeros and ones. So if you wanted to actually stop black market programs, you would have to get rid of that cash flow, which would stop all of these groups from being able to do stuff outside of the digital world. So all of the whole, when you look at it in a 20-year period from 2001, we make Homeland Security. Homeland Security enacts all of these new things, new powers that basically give them broad prosecution and everything laid out for them so they could do anything to anybody, and there's no protections under the Constitution in comparison to their bills that they pass, the NDAA. I mean, there's so many of them, and they update them and they update them. And then when a real emergency happens, like Helene, you get to see that none of the money was put in any of the places they told you it was going to. It was all for other programs. And now we're about to do a reverse thing. Once those facilities no longer have people to detain, then they're open for the private sector for debt prisoners. And I'll get into that. So there's going to be this debanking of many people. It's already started. De-citizening, debanking, and now you're in the same boat as the visitors from other places that might not be here legal. You're in the same boat. You've been de-citizened, you're debanked. But I wanted to show you some headlines that kind of go right into this. That's the wrong one.
Yeah, and as you do that, please remember, buy us a coffee. Buy me a coffee /civilization cycle. If you like the content you're hearing, please drop us a double espresso. And I'd like to see the slide that you're talking about there. /civilization cycle. Buy me a coffee.
And then here's another thing you were talking about before I get into that, about how all the $100 bills are marked up. Where I live, that's a major issue. And let me tell you, the counterfeiting is perfect. It's so perfect that the banks are circulating it. And I know this for a fact that people are losing money because the bank won't cover it. What they do is they call the Secret Service. They open up an investigation. So if you went to the ATM and you got, I don't know how many bills out of there, and 2 or 3 of them happen to be counterfeit, you go try to purchase something somewhere. They put the little marker on there. This is counterfeit. They call the police. They say, where do you get it? I got it from the bank. The bank says, no way. We got safeguards. It can't happen. And they'll throw a statistic at you that's like, it's almost impossible. Yet it keeps happening. And then you're left with a choice. Do I call the government and open an investigation on myself, or do I just eat it and lose the money? And the problem is the police are having hard time distinguishing real bills from the new counterfeit ones. They have the plastic strip. They have the micro watermarks. Everything's perfect. It's all in there. So that's a major reason that they're going to say that they can't have cash. We can't have it. The counterfeiters are doing it too perfect. And then here, we'll get into something worse. You can't trust your phone now, right? This is going to be the next wave of cyber attacks and warnings. You can't now, and this comes after they set up all this double verification junk where you can't just go to your email and use a password. You can't go to your bank and just log in with your password. You have to have a double verification. Your phone has to triply identify that you're you. And then here we go down to the path of where your money starts disappearing digitally. And with everything controlled by AI, it can go at pennies on the dollar or a tenth of a penny on the dollar and just disappear into nowhere. And you would never even notice that it's happening. But anyway, here's number of 401.
Think about the corruption there end of it too, Ransom. Like, if they're going to do away with cash, then how are the corrupt politicians going to continue to be paid? If everything does go to, say, cryptocurrency, well, that you can follow that money literally. Right. Anywhere, every transaction's on the ledger, so you can follow it. So they try to sell it as one of these things that is going to, stop corruption because they can't spend the money because you can trace it versus cash. So the politicians are going to take a hit here in the beginning, I think.
it kind of can be traced, but then again, they can put it through so many things and so many layers and
Yeah, you could
exchanges
put it through a
and put it
spinner, I
back,
guess.
and then money disappears off the top of the citizenry and it shows up somewhere else. Um, Here's this 9.5% uptick in millionaires from their 401ks because things are starting to go good. But then you got FBI warns iPhone and Android users stop sending texts. Well, guess what? Where does your two-factor verification come from? It comes through the texting. It can all be copied, hacked. You can get a verification and give someone all of your banking info that they need to get whatever they want. And then,
Yeah, how does Google Authenticators fit in that there versus receiving a text?
right. So they're going to have to keep moving this stuff around. Meanwhile, the average Joe is not going to understand it. And here's an article from the Wall Street Journal predicting $200,000 Bitcoins by the end of 2025. What do you think about that?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so
now, will it pull back this cycle like it has the previous cycles? I don't know. The institutional money's in here. XRP is going to be on the ledger with XLM, which is Stellar Lumens. They both running together. So it's hard to tell where it's going to go this time. I mean, those first two cycles or three cycles, excuse me, since like 2012, they were just infancy animals. But now we are absolutely into the full Bitcoin adoption. You know, I want to talk about Michael Saylor's company there for a minute too, when we have a chance. But 200,000, you know, they're talking about $13 million Bitcoin by middle 2030s somewhere. So those people who bought a Bitcoin at 6 cents or $600 or 6,000 are going to be sitting on 13 million. Again, you know, that kind of wealth, that's the whole thing that keeps you in the trap, is you being stuck on a treadmill to pay for life expenses. Now, can they allow that many people to get away because they got in on something early, or I don't know. You know, so far it's difficult to, you know, if you're going to self-custody on some, you know, cold storage device, it's a little more difficult. If you get the device, obviously you could probably hack into that. There's tons of videos on how you can do it, but you actually need to have the device to do such a thing, to get into the Trezor or the ledgers. But aside from that, if you're able to keep it out of people's hands and you're able to keep that passphrase, seed phrase away from anybody, should be able to hold on to the funds. They've been, even with the encryption, they haven't been able to crack anything yet with it. But I do agree, 200K, that's a low number. Not for 2025, but moving to 26, they're talking about 500,000 Bitcoin. You know, and then to run it up, and it's clipping along at like 29% per year. So on an average return rate, at least according to Michael Saylor, I've been watching a fair few of his videos lately, 29% per year on an average over the next umpteen years. It's just going to continue. So long answer for a short question.
yeah, and then here's this. This is kind of what I'm talking about, is if you have the right stuff, you're going to be able to keep your money on the top end of things. They're going to know how to do it. They're going to keep updated with the new trends. They're going to protect their money. But for the average schmo, they're not going to understand any of this stuff. And it's all controlled by AI. All of it. Wall Street partying like it's 1998 as AI fuels gains. Unmatched since .com era. Unmatched. So will that pop? I don't know. It's all in the AI world now. Like all of it. And we're looking through like all the jobs. All those tech jobs are disappearing that would give people money to invest in all these things. And then this is kind of what I was talking about as far as it's going to be a new landscape. You don't really have to worry so much about nations fighting nations. You have to worry about nations financing basically criminal gangs with digital money that can be untraceable. You see, it's untraceable when you need it to be, and very traceable when you don't want it to be. If you're trying to, you know, make money off of it yourself as the citizen, everything's tracked, everything's traced, but we can move numbers around and pay criminal gangs all over the world. Meanwhile, the normal person...
Yeah, you're getting an audit because it's off by $3, right?
Right. And then also all of these high-paying jobs, gone. Robots are doing them. Even the stock traders, I know that they're worried because the person element is now disappearing, where you can do it yourself from your phone. You know, you might get advice from somebody because they're keeping track of it. But if you really want to know, you just need a phone. That's it. And a couple of apps, if you know what you're doing, buy when it's down, sell when it's up. The algorithm does everything for you, but somebody's
they're trading
programming
on a thousandth
it.
of a penny. You realize that. So what you're talking about in describing some of these algorithms, they're trading on a thousandth or a 1/10,000th of a cent,
Right.
but 10,000 times per second. Like somebody, you know, when you start to look in at Aladdin and some of these, you know, just whatever you consider trading bots on more the institutional side, scraping a thousandth of a cent millions of times a day, hundreds of millions of times a week, you know, that just keeps getting added up over there. And then, you know, what you consider as a stock trade, you know, most people go, okay, if it goes from $30 to $40, I'll sell it. Well, they're talking about every single second manipulating the market and moving fractions of a cent over. This is where we're getting, and then, you know, if you're going to spin some cash, this is the reason that tornado cash has been, you know, put through the ringer in terms of SEC and Department of Justice investigations, because tornado cash is basically what they call a spinner, where you put your, let's say Ethereum, for example, in it, and then it pops out the back end and it breaks that chain of what was custody before, where you could follow every single transaction through. And then suddenly it pops out the back, washed and cleaned as a brand new transaction that had nothing to do with any prior transaction. There's no connection whatsoever from what went into Tornado Cash and what comes out of Tornado Cash. And in the early days, they called them Bitcoin spinners because the only thing that was around back at that time was Bitcoin and that sort of thing. It used to be drip faucets and Bitcoin spinners. That's like super old tech from like, God, 2014 and stuff. But the drip faucets, you know, those are a thing of the past too. But I don't really, you know, and like you said, you know, the reason they're really so heavy on Tornado Cash now of closing anything down of this type of tech is because you can hide those transactions. Now, it does cost you a fee to run it through there, obviously, but when they pull it out the backside, you are totally clean and not related. So then you can spin it off to another wallet that is totally fresh, as you say, no fingerprints on it.
Well, that's kind of where I was going with that, is exactly how that algorithm is trading in bits of pennies is the same way that people can steal massive amounts of wealth without anyone knowing it, because it's leaving at such a small amount, no one notices it. Right? So then people are taking
because on your statement, it wouldn't, because on the statements, you're coming to a full penny on the rounding. So if they were stealing a tenth of a cent from you or a fifth of a cent, it would take 5 months for you to find even that 1 cent difference.
Yeah.
Times hundreds of millions of people every month.
Here's a scary idea for you. You're into trading. You're into, you know, following markets. You're looking through the news headlines for indications that you might want to sell or buy something or get out of something. What happens when the censorship moves over to the financial market, where the average Joe can't get the information that they want because it's censored? Everything's censored in real time. This has nothing to do with that. I just using this, you know, because it shows the excess censorship. That was all about political stuff and different things like that. What if they start moving that to real life information that you need to navigate the system? In other words, you don't hear about it till after it crashes. You don't hear about it till after it rallies because you were censored as a customer while the bigwigs got that information at lightning speed. I mean, that's a scary whole new...
China censors everybody who talks negatively or puts ulterior numbers out to what the government does. They're arresting financial bloggers in China, so many that many bloggers just quit doing it because they, even though it was a statistic, they were arrested for showing the true statistics. We're already there in China.
Right. And I think that's the whole reason, literally, this whole digital AI controlled monetary system is the reason that every country in the world is going to this digital ID system of biometrics. It's so that they're going to lock down the people in this digital system where they can't do anything unless they're, you know, growing it that with their own two hands, they won't be able to have it.
Yeah, what if you got a Bitcoin at 6 cents and you want to sell it at 13 million and you're in that digital system? Like, will you be able to exit your part of a Bitcoin so you don't have to work anymore? Or will it be a 99% tax and then it'll be a 40% capital gains tax unrealized every year as you hold that thing? You know, they're already starting to talk about crypto unrealized gains. Damn, what country was that? I read just yesterday. Oh, France. France. They're starting to push legislation on the books where they want you as a crypto holder to pay a 40% unrealized capital gain on your crypto holdings, even though you are just holding it, you never sold it. You can only do that for 2 years. Do the simple math. And you're already at, 2 years and you're back to zero again, almost. Third year, you're absolutely below zero at that point. You're going to be having to pay tax and owe the government taxes after the third year. So that just doesn't, they're already starting, a few drips, like your house leaks. I got a roof, and after that hurricane, that Hurricane Ellie, I don't know, I got a roof leak in my roof. I can't fix it. It's just one drip that's coming through from somewhere. It's like that first single drip. And then there's a second one in a different location. And then, they're testing the waters.
It's unknown.
They're testing the waters. I can't hear you, Ransom.
No, I pushed the wrong button. I started playing the commercial there.
All right.
It was only a split second.
Buy me a coffee /civilization cycle if you like the content. And then also, as we're dripping into the break here, civilizationcycle.com if you want to get the show notes for the points we've been covering tonight. We're going to come back for the second hour here. And I did want to talk about food in South Africa, the corn imports and exports. Well, South Africa not grown enough corn this year. Again, if they're going to start censoring financial news, they've already been really heavily censoring climate news. So then we get to the overlap here where they're going to start censoring grain news, grain output news also, because all these three worlds intersect. We're going to talk about it right when we come back to second hour here. Ransom Godwin. Peace.
If early man knew they would be the progenitors of great civilizations, or if they knew when their empires would fall and disappear into history. Fortunately for us as modern man, we can recognize that we are at the precipice, a point in history where we can see the cycle changing. Where we go from here is up to us.
How do you feed your families when the shelves are empty, the stores are shut, and there's no food available? What is the fastest, easiest, and most productive foods to grow? What is the quickest way to get somebody who has no skills at all up and running and producing very quickly? If you understand that we're at a point in history where it is no longer optional to be growing your own food, if you're like really freaked out and concerned because you've never grown food before and you don't have any skills, you don't know how to do that, but you know how important it is, then I want to let you know, however you stumbled here, you're in the right place. My name is Marjorie Wildcraft. I'm the founder of the Grow Network, and I have been the female leader in the survival and preparedness space for the last 20 years.
How to grow lots of food, even if you have no experience, are older and out of shape. This is for people who want the fastest and easiest ways to produce healthy and delicious meat, eggs, and vegetables. Because you know that growing your own food is like printing your own money. During this webinar, you will get status of global food shortages, how long the crisis will last, how much space you need to grow food, easiest, highest calorie foods you can produce, a complete plan for producing all the food you need, how to get started today, regardless of season. Marjorie will show you the fastest, easiest, and simplest ways to produce calories and nutrition, especially in a crisis and/or grid-down situation. The assumption is that you have no experience and you need to start producing food immediately. The most popular part of the webinar is the Q&A session at the end. So please come prepared with your questions.
Pro Clear Cleanse is the most powerful spray cleaner on the market today. No elbow grease necessary. Pro Clear Cleanse cuts through grease and grime like a chef's knife. Finally, the one cleaner that can do it all. Powerful surfactant cleaning technology cleans ovens, glass, porcelain, even polished wood. Environmentally friendly, less packaging and waste with no harsh smells, pet safe, child safe. 5 tablets equals 1 bottle of traditional cleaner. It's 5 months of cleaning for a fraction of the cost. Behold the grease-erasing power of Odor Crush. Simply drop a tablet into your bottle of warm water and shake it so it is evenly diluted. Spray the surface you want cleaned. Let set longer for tougher grease. Take a paper towel or a reusable cloth and wipe. done and done.
Howdy, partner. You know people are having dinner and the smart ones are eating beef. Let me tell you a brief history, or more accurately, a beef history of dinner. Domestication of cattle happened around 8000 BC, but that's not when beef became what's for dinner. We've been eating beef since times before history. The earliest cave paintings have beef eloquently depicted on the walls. Those cave drawings of the hunt were for the aurochs, a primitive bovine. That's right. Beef. Like I said, people are having dinner now, and the smart ones, well, they're eating beef. Americans want great food today, but we also want to have great food to eat if things go south in a hurry. Unlike most companies that take the cheapest, worst parts of the cow, then turn them into beef crumbles, whatever that is. They freeze dry them in hopes that their customers will never actually try to eat it. Our premium beef cubes are sous vide, freeze dried, and ready to be eaten right now, or in a decade from now. We want you to eat our beef now, so you can buy more. Prep with steaks, not with beef crumbles. This is a high-quality product. It's all American beef and 100% natural. None of that craziness of lab-grown meat and mRNA jabs. Our beef has a shelf life of 10+ years. This is high-quality cooked and freeze-dried beef for long-term storage, or not. Eat well today and eat well tomorrow. Click the link in the description to get your Prepper beef with Prepper All Naturals, so you will always know what's for dinner.
Don't forget to sign up for the show notes to get information we sometimes
commenting. I got a bunch here to read through. Hello from East Tennessee, Hilltop Prepper. Hell yeah. Welcome. And Taco Banana saying, sadly, I feel like I need to stock up on my cheap Chinese goods before the prices run like crazy. And then, you know, you're going to have to buy 3 of them, like he says here. I had to buy 3 water heaters because they broke 3 times in a row, all these parts that we need. Agreed. Like everything's planned obsolescence. So even if you buy in advance, you know you're going to have to, it probably won't last very long. You have to use it very in a gingerly fashion, be very gentle with the Chinese products because they're going to break. And it's supposed to be 40 degrees in Minnesota. Insane. Yeah, I agree. Like the weather systems have flipped completely all around the planet. I know you got a year's worth of snow in so many places where it's been snowing. Other places they're hitting some record heat. Other places are just blisteringly record cold. And we'll see. This is definitely going to disrupt agriculture. That's one thing I can say with a straight face is everything that we're seeing with all these extremes, agriculture is being interrupted for sure. And then what's that? Autodidactic. We need to bring back steel mining and manufacturing, medicines and silicon chips too. Yeah, but we need the rare earth minerals. We're going to need the gallium, the germanium, etc., for the rare earths to put those and do anything with silicon technologies. And William Hooper Hopper. Hit that like button, stoners. Of course you should. Herb Green following it up. We might not be in that system. However, we're going to be free, but it won't be free and easy. I do agree. Oh, and here's one. Kasanim, I believe that's how you, Kasanim. I don't believe for a minute they're going to deport anybody. Well, we shall see. That's going to be a quick understanding if they will or they won't. And I think it's just going to turn this, I think America is going to turn into a conflict zone when they try to do this. There's so many weapons out here, and you don't think people are going to fight back from being deported? It's going to be a conflict zone in our cities, and who knows if it'll spill out into the countryside as well. And here's a moon sprout. Chile in Texas, no hard freeze yet. They're still harvesting tomatoes. Awesome. We froze ours up because they were going to get frozen. And Herb Green back at it. Hey, have you seen the video in which a younger couple uses night vision camera to record an iPhone taking an infrared image for facial recognition every 3 seconds? Yes, as a matter of fact, I have seen that. Have you ever seen the images of your LED lights that keep flashing every few seconds too? That's why you get the headaches around those lights. And last one here for us to round out the first hour. Pyramid Pure Drew. I like this. I made 3 times my power bill back to heat my aquaponic greenhouse using Bitcoin mining rigs. I probably think it's about ASICS rigs or something. They put out an enormous amount of heat, and that was always the drawback with a lot of these mining rigs was, how do you dissipate the heat out of there? Well, if you can use that heat to heat a greenhouse or something, you're saving your power and you're getting the heat and you're mining Bitcoin or XRP or something. And I had one for you as I was looking through here. XRP, that it was let's see, here's the exact quote. Because I was asking earlier, I was asking Ransom, and also Ryan, who helps us tonight with production, is helping us every single week now. Trump names David Sachs as White House AI and crypto czar. I wasn't super familiar with him, but then it comes out that he is in the same club as Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, funding up parts of PayPal. And then here it is, PayPal Mafia is actually behind XRP. And if you want to know about XRP and Hashgraph, well, you consider blockchain, everybody's so blockchain. Okay, the people are catching on blockchain, cool. But that's only the intermediate step to bring us to Hashgraph, which is going to be the nearly zero latency, instantaneous ledger for all things. And when you talk about the Internet of Things and digitizing every asset on the planet, smart dust, real-time monitoring of everybody on the planet, track, trace, animals, plants, etc., Hashgraph is where they're going to take that, because that can computationally, the way it's solved, not in a linear fashion, but multiplicative fashion, is the scale and layering on top of that is trillions of computations per second. They're at billions already, and they're going to bring it to trillions. And once they do that, we talk this nightmarish stuff of Internet of Things and track, trace, and all these things, it's going to come to life. But all of you just learning about blockchain right now, just realize that's only a mid-step to where they take us to Hashgraph. So anybody holding on to H-bar, wow. A few cents is going to turn into tens of thousands of dollars. If it truly does, I'm just saying if, not financial advice. If it does roll the direction that they are talking with, real-time track and trace of every single person, insect, plant, animal, asset on this planet in real time, updated every second or every 2 seconds or 5 seconds on the planet in unison, that will run on Hashgraph. And if that is truly the base and the cornerstone of that system, H-bar would not be worth cents or 50 cents or 30 cents. It would be worth 30,000, 300,000, whatever it would be. It's going to be the cornerstone of the system. So just as much as Bitcoin's the cornerstone of cryptocurrency, where does that take us? But anyway, Revolution Radio, thank you for letting us broadcast tonight. If you do value free speech, Revolution Radio, right at the top there, navigation bar, there's a donate tab to keep their venue on air, along with the production costs and the software costs that they incur every single month, so we can bring you this information. And with that said, long-winded intro again, hour 2. Ransom, fired up. What's on the mind?
Well, I was just thinking, since your commenter brought up the pictures being taken by their phone, I brought that up on Tim Pool, right? And I was talking about, it's not just that, your computer, your tablet, your television, all your smart devices, your smart meter. People, there's, what do you call that? The smart cameras on the corner, the CCTV cameras, they're all doing this. The access to the data is available to certain people. They're not watching you, like looking at you, oh, there's David, until they're interested in you. And then all that data is available. And I got a new creepy idea for you that intersects, no pun intended, with your idea.
At the intersection.
That has to do with your idea of tracking and tracing everything. So we know we're going to a digital ID system everywhere. You're not going to hide from it in the third world. I just showed an article about Africa. There's a big an initiative to get everybody tracked and traced there. Everywhere this is happening. So let me show you this new nightmare that I just thought up. and it combines
Yeah,
with
they're
our
going first in Africa. Africa, believe it or not, they're laying down this whole track trace digital thing in all these third world nations first before it reaches us. It's the opposite this time.
All right. So I'm a mad scientist, and I know that I can track bugs because we can put chips on them, right? Also on the Tim Pool show, I talked about electromagnetic waves changing the behavior of fruit flies and mice, proving that they could make them sexually excited, hungry, not hungry, angry, sad, happy, you name it. All the way down to move left, move right. So we've had this for a long time, actually. This is a story about these creepy Frankenstein cyborg cockroaches, and they're controlled by humans. It's remote control. Now, say you have a grain field, and I have 200 of these, female, and maybe 100 male. And I use these chips to send them out in fields across your country where I'm telling them that they're sexually excited to go into reproduction, to lay a bunch of eggs, which eats all your crops. When I say that people have no idea what's coming, this is actually big technology on this little bug. We have things that in the nano world that can do the same thing. In other words, there's parasites, there's fungals, there's bacterials, there's viruses. We can interact with them now on a technological level to program them from the DNA. We could change their DNA, but we can also add the hydrogel platform, which is nanotech, little machines that do certain tasks to initiate a response in living organisms. So you can scale that up to bugs, and there are many bugs like weevils. I mean, you name it. Just
Black
pick
widow
a bug.
spiders.
Well, pick a bug that eats a crop, and then put a chip on it. You drop 100, and then you make them multiply. Like grub worms, all kinds of different things that'll destroy crops if they outproduce or overproduce in one season or another. Now, if you knew that you were going to have extra wet conditions in an area, and then on top of that, you send in plagues of famine, plagues that cause famine, and the plague is, in the Bible, they talk about sending these locust swarms. Well, we could do that today with technology on purpose, easily. And this is just one demonstration of how we can use tech to change the behavior of organisms that live in our environment. And while people are debating whether or not they can control hurricanes or, there's anti-gravitic devices floating around, they are busy engineering the entire biosphere, not just the human domain, but the entire life biological sphere of interaction amongst all organic creatures of any kind, from the macro to the micro, so to speak. And we are injecting technology, but that's not even the weird layer of it. That's just cool. That's a remote control bug. Now you add drones for disbursement. Now you add algorithms that tell the bugs exactly when and where to lay eggs, when to reproduce, when to eat the crops. You could see where I'm going with this. We're about to see unprecedented levels of attacks on the food and on the tech that you rely on to have a stable civilization. And more the government's warning about cyber attacks on the banking level of your bank, and then you personally at home, your phones, and then they claim themselves that they're vulnerable to the same cyber attacks. At the same time, simultaneously, they put our markets, they even put, and here's another scary idea if I can find it, they want to use AI to basically smell smoke to find forest fires faster. Now, that sounds great, right? But what if you use that same tech to decide who's barbecuing outside, or who's eating meat, or, who's doing what they weren't supposed to during lockdowns? I mean, this goes back to and I think it was 1998, I read an article about a funding project where they were going to make a drone that had sensors on it, FLIR cameras to see the heat in the forest, and sensors to detect like ammonia and carbon monoxide and other trace gases that animals, specifically hominids, they were looking for Bigfoot. This is what the project was about. They wanted to send these drones out into the forest to find Bigfoot, and they were crowdsourcing money. Well, today the militaries use the exact same technology, except for they're finding people. And this idea that, you know, we can't control movement across borders is silly, because we have technology that's so far beyond being able to track every single person out there in the desert. With one pass of an elevated drone at several thousand feet up, they get a good scan. They know where you're at. They not only know where you're at, they know what you're carrying. They know what wildlife is around you. Have you ever seen the guys that hunt the razorbacks and warthogs? Not warthogs, just wild hogs and Texan stuff. They're using the newer FLIR cameras that add color to biological life forms. So in other words, every little bird and pig and deer is lit up by the AI in the product. And that's old junk. The military has so much better stuff. Now, when you combine it with the fact that now we can control insects in mass with electromagnetic waves and literally putting chips on them, all the way down to nanotech. You were talking about nano dust, right? On the Tim Pool show. It can be used for tracking. It can be used for anything. So they used to do this thing where they would put like a isotope or something on something, and then you could track it with a satellite because there's not much of that isotope out there. Well, now they can do it with smart dust interacting with the electromagnetic, I guess you would call that it's not really the hardware. What do you call that? I lost the word. The peripherals, right? The peripherals that you hook up to everything. Now that smart dust can be used with that, along with algorithms that are in the background. There's no human at the wheel. They set the program in motion. So the programs are already working. So if you think in the future you're going to be like trading gold and, you know, sneaking out there and trying to use barter, if they said no and they've locked it down, you'll be found out instantly. And not only that, just think about the warfare applications for controlling life forms. You could move herds of meat out of an area where there's nothing to eat for the people there. I mean, it gets worse and worse. And this is what I mean by I don't think people know what's coming. This is all going exponentially in one direction. Who's at the helm is kind of a question now, because humans are giving control over to jobs, healthcare, defense, everything. It's all in the arena of AI now, which puts the control in a few people that have big enough minds to keep track of the programming that they're doing it. And I would suggest that we're at that singularity where they're about to lose control because the programs are now making the programs. I don't know. There was another
back to
throw up
stories of Atlantis.
Stuff.
We're getting kind of close to that Atlantean downfall from the tech, whatever, you know, you can listen to the myths and the legends of Atlantis, where, you know, the society had come to some point where the technology was overused and it was at the point of planetary destruction. Sounds like we're kind of there. And that bug thing scares me a little bit too. Not only that, but what if you start using poisonous insects with that? And then that would be targeted assassination. Oh, it was a black widow.
Absolutely.
Oh, it was a certain type
mosquito.
of mosquito. Yeah, anything. You know, and imagine if the mosquito had, you know, they're talking about putting all these things in the mosquito for delivery in through the skin anyway. So imagine if there's like a single that can be added, and it's just like filling a syringe of a certain cocktail, you know, that it could be loaded into a mosquito and sent out. I mean, the possibilities are endless if you're going to be able to control insect life on what can be done, delivered, or how that can be utilized. But yeah, destroying crops would be something, because everybody needs to eat, and that's the whole thing. If you can take a nation's crop production down, you can destroy a nation. We've seen this many a time through history. Crops fail, but there was no, international shipping back, several hundred years ago at the speed we do it today. So nations failed with their crops. They starved. There was no, rescue. There was no cavalry of ships bringing in 60,000 tons of wheat from somewhere else to alleviate that. That just didn't happen. So now what?
What about the bug
with the
proof?
aquatic life too?
What about the bug proof stuff? Like the Monsanto and the GMO stuff that's meant to repel the insects. Well, that means those insects would probably just destroy organic crops. I mean, you could do it however you wanted. You could target whatever you wanted.
Yeah, and the gene editing on that whole thing too. That was the dream of that in the Green Revolution in the 50s when they started messing with our plant species to get them without having to use pesticides. That was the whole thing. It's like they're trying to get it so you didn't have to use pesticide by gene editing the plants that would have some sort of natural resistance to that particular insect. That's great for that one insect. But then what about the other 30 or 40 out there? So now we're actually using more pesticides, even though we have the GMO. We're using an enormous amount more herbicides as well, because we got to kill all the weeds. Now there's super weeds out there. It's just everything that was promised to us has been a rug pull pretty much. We're going to gene edit because we don't need to use as much chemical, but now we're using 10 times more chemical because of the Franken species that have been created. Now what happens when the same thing, instead of sending cattle or bison or bird or whatever away from the land, what if you could do that same phenomenon with aquatic life, and you could take an entire fishery and make it move? So when that coastal community or country would go off fishing, there would be nothing there. Like, it could be worked a few different ways. I mean, those fish might just very well die if they get off their shoals and they go out in the deep water and they don't have anything to feed off of. But if you're going to try to clear out an entire fishery to cause starvation, then would that not be something that would be, because I don't think we're under human control any longer. I believe what is controlling us, you might call it AI, but it is something from the past that has reared its ugly head again, that's been here waiting, kind of in a hibernation phase, that's been brought out again. And, through chapters of history, through myths, and we are back at it again. So, maybe we will pray for a solar flare one day. Maybe we will pray for another Carrington event. Maybe. I don't know where it's going, but I see you got the spinner globe up there. Now, you remember when I was on Tim Pool and we were there and I showed that slide of the lineup of Jupiter, Earth, Mercury, Sun, and on the cross, the Shepherd's Cross right there, that is today. And we had some big quakes. Actually, excuse me, it's tomorrow. And I was saying, in that quake window, 48 hours there to look for that. So we're in that window today. So that was brought up. When did we do Tim's show back then? And I was last month. But, having this very special alignment called the Shepherd's Cross, it's a very rare one. And you can see you got the crossing pattern. It looks like a cross. Jupiter, Earth, Mercury, Sun for the longer piece. And then we got Venus, Earth, Mars crossing. And that will be tomorrow. And I can't read the timestamp. It's a little bit off on the bottom there. I don't know if you can see the time, but it'll be tomorrow in the morning. And that's where
13:27 p.m.
What time?
13:27 p.m. tomorrow on the 6th.
Okay, 1:27 p.m. So I'm curious what kind of seismic activity or volcanic activity might increase. If we're already seeing 7.0 quake plus 6.6 plus 6.0, are we going to see the New Madrid Fault Zone have something? Because, those significant quakes offshore, that there's volcanoes where those were occurring. So perhaps there was a massive underwater eruption that occurred there too, that they'll start seeing some plumage through the water here in the next few days that they can verify underwater eruption. But Cascadia Range absolutely goes off. One of those volcanoes erupts every single grand solar minimum. I've seen and done an enormous amount of research. From Mount Rainier seems to be one of them. Mount Hood also. There's just a few volcanoes that go off during these very low periods of solar activity. And when we come into the 400-year cycle, there's always at least one volcano erupting off the Cascadia Range. And, I'm wondering with plate tectonics and these different forces that we're about to experience here, if something in Cascadia will go off again, or if something in a New Madrid fault zone area will go off again. And by the way, there is a very small fault zone in South Carolina that ripped through with like a 7.5 that ripped down Charleston way back in the 1700s. So there's a lot of different things that we're on multi-100-year cycles here that could be right at the doorstep again. And again, is it all tied into these geologic changes, financial changes, sociologic changes, population changes, and everything else? I mean, is this all tied together anyway? And the distraction is so we don't notice it, that they could have warned us about all these things to get us ready. But instead of us focusing on why they didn't warn us over the last 20 to 30 years, knowing this cycle is inbound, they can keep everybody divided on getting out pom-pom cheerleaders for the next busload of people that got ripped across the border again. It's just the whole divide and conquer thing continues, whether it's for your side or for their side or whatever. There's this continuous. Don't look at what the government does. Just fight amongst yourselves. Find another enemy, anything except us. Don't look at what we're doing. And it just continues again and again. And I think we're really at the full court press on this thing here, where there's so many changes coming in, and you need to ask yourself, like, what is being deflected away from? Because knowing about this grand solar minimum phenomenon that I learned about, let's say 2013, 2014, really got into it. We would have had at least 10 years at that time to prepare to where we would be right now. And no governments have warned us at all. And here we come creeping into solar cycle 26 on the downfall. And when it gets cold and crops are lost, hey, it was their fault. The society cannot be salvaged in its present form. So you need to think about how governments would respond to a non-salvageable situation. Would you warn the people? Of course not. That would cause more chaos way in advance. Because if the government would come out in 2015 and said, by the way, next solar cycle or the next solar cycle, 25 or 26, we're not going to grow enough food on the planet. Your food's going to get so expensive, we won't be able to have it. You're going to have to go to rationing. And, people who live down the equator are going to have it far better than you who live up north. And you're going to lose most of your crop yields. But please pay your taxes and please obey the rule of law and keep investing for the long term. Society would have broken down by now, just based on what could have happened and the loss of hope for the future. So I understand why governments want to keep a lot of this stuff secret, why they don't want the masses to understand it. And for those trying to put the messaging out, why they always want to quash them and silence their voices, because mass panic would ensue. And then you sit on that, that fence edge there going, I kind of see what they're talking about, but hey, people need to at least hear the information so they can make their own choices and perhaps prepare themselves, even though the masses aren't preparing. They should still get the message. That was been my world for 10 years here. But I can absolutely see why governments would say, I don't want to tell everybody, because the herd mentality and the easiness to spook the populace. And, I wanted to come on something here, these alien reproduction vehicles, those ARVs that we're starting to see across the skies here. I mean, once the first one lands and there's quote unquote alien contact, do you think our stock markets are going to stay intact that day? I think that will be a civilization pivot at that moment. Now, whether it's an alien reproductive vehicle that we have rebuilt, or whether it's one of our own with antigravitics that we've spun off using Tesla technologies that they haven't allowed out into the public, it'd be too disruptive. Whether one of those happens or not, and a chimera pops out and suddenly we're having a conversation with something off of this planet, I'm just really wondering about the stability of markets across the planet. There are going to be people flocking to the churches on their knees crying. The invasion started. It's going to be a world shifting event. Whether it's truly an off-planet species or if it's one of our own that is purported to be off. Oh, it's a ladybug in my room here. Speaking, you're spooking me, man. There's a ladybug flying around in the middle of winter in my room. Where'd that come from? But these ARVs. So take me through it. You're pretty versed in this thing. So tell me about the markets and how they would last if we have alien contact this year coming up.
That's funny. It seems like they're testing the waters. I guess you know the story about the webbot from, what is it? Was it 1997, I think?
That Cliff Highs thing?
Yes. That predicted the alien invasion yesterday. And, the whole internet was all up about, the alien invasion. And I was kind of talking about that earlier, that there's been mass reports of UFOs and drone activity. And some of the footage, I look at it, they're regular airlines that are coming out of the airport. People are so unfamiliar with technology
They're
that
getting spooked by all the reports of the UFOs that everything they see with a light is now a UFO.
right, and not only that, I know that they make chimeras. This is pretty easy technology at this point. So, if an anti-gravitic device landed in my lawn and a frog creature or gray alien or something walked out of it, my immediate thought is, where did they make you at? I mean, like, where did they make you? Are you U.S.? Are you Chinese? Are you know, like a Soviet project? I don't know. Did you come from 1945 or through 47? I don't know. Because, there's a lot of argument, especially now that more of the technologically advanced side of World War II's plans have come out, that they were messing with this stuff. And would you be more afraid if a guy in a German outfit landed 2 years after the war ended in an anti-gravitic device in the middle of New Mexico? Would that be more scary to you after World War II, or a little, gray guy that may or may not exist? And it just opens up so many more questions. So people are so ready for something new that's something we've been predicting. They can do this fake alien invasion. All you need is like 2 or 3 ships to crash, a couple aliens to get shot on the news, and then you have an endless hole that you'll never be able to verify, that they can tax every last citizen of Earth to protect them for their safety against the environment, the climate, and the aliens. Both of those are things that are I'm not going to say imaginary, but you, as the private person, can't even prove it one way or the other. So therefore, you're just going to pay taxes on it just in case. Just like they tricked you to pay taxes for breathing, which is called carbon credits or carbon taxes, or any rule that involves plant food is not only a tax on food, because we eat plants, but it's a tax on breathing. And they've made millions, I'm going to say billions, of morons out there that believe they're make-believe. And they're willing to sit in the traffic, destroy works of art, burn down buildings, assault people. And, this is becoming a dangerous thing also that we're about to face in the future, is I'm going to say the lone sheep. It's not the lone wolf. It's a lone sheep that's confused, doesn't know how things work, feels victimized, been brainwashed into being victimized, and then they lash out very awkwardly. I don't know if you saw that, what looks like a amateur hit on the health guy. So what I was looking at is a guy that didn't know what he was doing. He had a combat stance, but somebody told him the when and the where. And from what I could tell, he was using a printed gun. And that's why he had to recock it with every shot. It was either a really antique gun, doubtful, or a 3D printed gun, which I'm pretty sure it is. But when the news comes out, they're going to show you this big old long black gun that wasn't even used. And they'll make it about that, if they even find the guy. Because he seems real similar to the, what's that, pipe bomb guy from the Democratic convention that they can't find, or didn't want to find, or whatever the case is. And on top of that, with real-time censorship, how would you know that even happened? And back to the aliens thing. I can make some convincing stuff now with my P1000 camera, some digital effects. If I really spent the time and sat down, bought the programs, paid for the AI, and just took the time, like 2 or 3 months, I could come up with a convincing alien invasion. And people on the internet wouldn't be able to tell. I've played AI, bad ones and good ones, of myself, and no offense to my watchers, but they couldn't tell. One time they knew because I told them it was an AI. They were like, hey, it's off. But a couple of times they didn't know because I didn't tell them. And no offense to them if they feel like they got tricked. I was doing a little experiment. So if you put into terms that somebody somewhere has the keys to the kingdom, and under them are groups of giant businesses that are now handing over their power to AI, and those AIs are interacting with the other AIs. Somewhere it's like lost in translation. Where is the human element other than the commodity? So now we're just plain and simply a commodity. And I hate to say it, but you know what happens to commodities? If they don't get the money they want for the commodity, they're just as likely to dispose of it. I mean, and that's kind of at the point we're at. And now we're seeing the end results of what Obama called the biggest transformation of wealth. We're well into that now. So the reset has already happened, and people don't know it. They're still waiting for it. It already happened. It's in the arena of technology, in the control of life, money, and food. And while people are debating political ideologies, the technocratic superstate is increasing in power, reach, and technological ability. It's all becoming so exponential that it really is a nightmare. So while we're still struggling to become independent with our food and stuff like that, that's going to become essential in the future, because at some point you're going to have to pick whether or not you're going to be part of the system or try to opt out of it or ride the fence, which in my opinion is probably impossible with the technological advances that are being put into biometrics, tracking and tracing, etc.
Yeah, and we keep thinking in our programmed minds that all this track and trace is here first, even though, London has the third most cameras on the planet, Beijing being number one, obviously. But we've been framed for that surveillance is here first. The digital IDs are being rolled out in Africa first. Because I do a lot of searching of Africa news. I'm on like 5 or 6 different news feeds of strictly African news, because I'm trying to follow the financing from China, the African Development Bank, and Russia into all these projects now that pretty much every Western power has been kicked out of Africa. It's not on our news because they don't want you to know that that is going on. We, and I say we collectively as the West, have been not politely ushered out of every single country that is in Africa by force. It doesn't matter if it's ECOWAS with the trading bloc on the western edge, or if it's in the Sahel. Everybody that was of a Western power has been asked to leave and is in the process of leaving, including the United States with our drone base there in Niger, out. Also the French, out. Everybody out. Nobody there. Netherlands, out. English, out. Anybody who had anything to do from the West that was in Africa is now out. But you're not hearing that on your local news, because that would make us look like we've lost our power, which we absolutely have in this Western, chess game that we're playing here. So who's in there? Well, it is the Chinese and the Russians are financing almost every new project. They're completing new oil pipelines, coming crisscrossing all across North Africa and the Sahel down into Central Africa. The port projects to bring Africa into the 21st century. They're having dozens of large port projects, anything that would rival anywhere on the planet, including Singapore. Port Sudan is one of those places, also in Tanzania. I mean, the amount of ports and the size of the ports and the cargo and the behemoth of goods coming out of Africa is absolutely going to rival anything that has ever been done on this planet. And you look at this, and this is the kind of news feeds I'm following, because I want to kind of stay ahead and, see really how powerful are the BRICS nations becoming. You got Trump threatening the BRICS, and I can see why. They're becoming very organized, and they're already trading amongst each other. They've kicked all Western powers out of Africa. Excuse me. And then they're going away from the dollar in unison. But at the same time, they're all about the full digital system, the digital e-naira. That is the Nigerian currency. They're trying to get everybody in Africa onto the digital system first, because they have no other way. They don't have to leapfrog anything. They're leapfrogging into the tech directly from day one. cash apps on phones. They did. A large majority of Africa was unbanked until now, until they got access to mobile phones, because they could do mobile phone banking now. And a majority of bank transactions are on the mobile devices. They're trying to outlaw cash in many a country across Africa, bringing you over into the digital system first, because you're coming out from somewhere that's completely undeveloped, only is getting electricity because of solar panels now. And the first thing they get are phones. Well, if you got a phone, that is the way they get you onto this digital system. And everywhere I look, and I wrote down, these are just ones off the top of my head that I can say in the last 2 weeks that I have seen articles about digital IDs being required for access to have a phone, to access any banks, banking, online banking, and also the what in Nigeria tried to do away with cash completely, but that backfired. So they had to bring the cash back again for a minute. So Eritrea, or Eritrea, however you like to say that, Ethiopia is another one. That's where the new Renaissance Dam is, where all the power for at least the first foothold into a new economic juggernaut is going to be supplied by Ethiopia, all the way down into South Sudan. Nigeria, Uganda, and Tanzania. These countries are fast-tracking digital IDs across Africa, and they're cross-service providers, that a service provider will go across borders and get service. But if you're going to partake in any of the systems moving forward in Africa, it is all going to be required that you're on the digital ID system. But see, that's very different than when we would be forced into it to change our way of life and like upset everything we've ever known, and then now you have to use this. It's going to be way more difficult to teach us a new trick. Whereas in Africa, they're just starting to give away phones to everybody to make sure everybody has a phone. Now in China, when they did the digital credit score, in the beginning, it was voluntary. But everybody had to get a phone to be able to interact with that. So even old grandmas who are 80 years old that never even had a phone before, a mobile phone, were forced to get mobile phones to still interact. So they had to learn the tech out of necessity. They couldn't even buy vegetables or interact or anything without understanding of how the phone worked, how their pay system worked, and grandmas at 90 years old having to relearn the phone to go shopping in their local market that they always use cash their whole lives. That occurred in like under 10 years in China. So in Africa, the rollout right now of new tech is they're giving away the phones to get everybody into the new tech leapfrog directly there. So they're not relearning anything. They're going into it, I mean, incredibly excited, because every country in Africa is becoming much more wealthy. Their healthcare is improving. The road systems are absolutely getting built out. Water filtration plants, schools are being built. All this because of Russian and Chinese finance, nothing from the West. We just destroyed that place left, right, and center, kept everything off the table there so we could get cheap mineral resources. And they've seen through the BS and they've seen through the lies. And then they ask these other countries, please help us kick all these Western powers out like the United States, France, England, and the Netherlands. Let us help. And here we sit today. So because of that, they're adopting some of the same systems that China offers and Russia offers, which includes the digital ID. You can already see the blueprint. Africa's going digital ID first before the rest of the world. That will be so saturated there that everybody will have their biometrics connected to their phones to be able to operate. And as this new financial system evolves, because not to be derogatory here, but most currencies in Africa are worthless or close to it. And when you come to try to exchange them on a market from a one-to-one, they're going to charge you 25 to 40% to just do the exchange on it because it's such a non-wanted currency. You know, you look about the South Sudanese dollar. Who's going to be able to change that even anywhere in America in an American bank? Maybe New York City, but nobody wants that kind of money. Nobody wants it. And how about you're in the middle of Chad? Do you want to exchange something? Oh, okay, I'm going to go work in Chad for a year, and I'm going to get a Himalaya-sized banknote of their currency, and I'm going to try to exchange that somewhere up in London. Nobody wants that money. So if they can move to stable coins that solves the reset of all the financials across Africa. They need to do away with cash. They're planning to do away with cash. They're already trying it in several nations in Africa simultaneously. It hasn't worked exactly yet because the vendors themselves, the vegetable sellers, the meat sellers, the small daily sellers, they're not able to integrate, and they're just not ready to go to full digital yet. But give them a couple more years, 4 to 5 years from now, I'm going to say it's going to leapfrog way past the West. It's going to be mostly digital on digital IDs and mostly digital phone apps that are going to be for digital payments, and cash will be a thing of the past across Africa, and operating predominantly on stable coins that are accepted anywhere across Africa for the same value of 1 equals 1. That's where they're going. That's the news I'm surfing every day. That's where they're going. They're way ahead of us on this. Luckily, over there, not here. But, the power and the wealth that Africa is going to have, I mean, I could see why Trump's like, you can't have your BRICS dollar. Because once Africa gets together as a trading union and starts integrating and cross-swapping with them without using U.S. dollars, and they start cross-swapping with China and Russia and all these other behemoths that need imports in India, et cetera, that's going to be trillions of dollars not used on the planet every single year, or even more. So we're at this push and pull moment here where Africa is absolutely starting to run away. Africa is going to be a very wealthy continent. Give it a few more years. It's going to be the breadbasket of the world as well. But they're going to have to interact completely and 100% saturated into a digital biometric system that is e-cash or stablecoin based. And we'll see how that works out for them. But that right now, that's the direction I do see it going, and have seen it going for the last year plus. And I encourage everybody to follow like Sputnik News or Sputnik Africa if you're on Telegram. I mean, the amount of stories coming out, like I've never seen any of these stories in the American media. And I'm just like overwhelmed, like, whoa, look at this. There's a new pipeline going in. They're building new refineries. This is another thing. These investment projects coming in from China and Russia, they are financing a dozen at least new refineries. Now, 2 of them are very near completion right now, which means the old way was multinational companies, I'm not going to say individual nation, there's many operating there, would basically steal the oil on pennies on the dollar from Nigeria, for an example, pull it offshore, refine it, and then sell it back to them at a premium price above what regular gasoline or diesel fuel prices or kerosene prices, jet fuel prices were across the world. So that cash cow money machine of near theft of the oil and then reinflating prices, pushing back in on refined finished products, those days are over. They're building their own refineries, and you've got to start to look at how much money is going to be lost from Western powers, because that financial system of wealth of just fossil fuel and oil and natural gas and refined products itself into the trillions of dollars a year is going to stay in Africa. They're going to pump the oil there, they're going to refine it there, and they're going to use it there. A complete cutoff of all Western nations is coming from Africa. So when you look around the world and go, there's a ton, a lot of resources coming out of Africa, raw materials that the world uses at discount prices, that is coming to an end. So if you start to look at why things are getting more expensive, well, that could possibly be one of the reasons that now African nations are asking real world full price for their materials and their raw materials and their unfinished goods. It wasn't like that before. That's why I'm saying Africa was kept off the shelf on purpose to make sure that Western powers could continue to pillage and get what they needed. And those days are over. I'm absolutely saying they're over. And I encourage everybody very, very, very highly, if I could say it again, very highly, to go look for any African news feeds you can and see what you're not seeing on purpose here in our feeds of our news. They are running away from us. And the Western media does not want you to see the leaps and bounds and how fast it is happening. It is truly head spinning. And then, the Arctic century, the Arctic routes up there outside Navy control of the U.S. Navy, they're building ports and interoperable container and shipping and logistics centers all through the Arctic Circle just so China and Russia can cross swap and trade outside the U.S. Navy influence. That's all being built out too. I encourage you to look up the Arctic Century. That's the name of the project. The Arctic Century is about Russia and China lining the entire Arctic Circle with ports, hubs, roads, and reshipment centers to be able to bring goods across the planet and then take it down the planet through China and the BRICS nations across what was the old Silk Road and down through Russia and take it across the Eastern Asian areas, all connecting around Kazakhstan somewhere. And we're not being told about any of this unless you do the research. This is the world we are into. And, it is not as it seems. We are being left in the dark in terms of what is happening on this planet. It is a charade at best of what we are being told here. They're keeping us in the dark. And I could go on and on. I'm super fascinated by Africa, to be the breadbasket and how much, like, trillions of dollars of funding is going in there. Trillions with a T. Not hundreds of billions, trillions. Just this year, there was almost $1 trillion of economic stimulus, investments, and from the Asian Development Bank to anywhere, World Bank, and they're really pushing money in, Bank for International Settlements, and also inside Russia with there is so much money being pushed into Africa, and we're just not hearing about it. So for Trump to come out and go, you can't use the BRICS dollar, well, I'm sorry, my man, you are so far late to the party right now that it's no different than trying to say we're going to send the U.S. military, but I mean, they won't even have any access to any of the bases they used to have access to do those hops and have surveillance and all that stuff. Those days are over. We are no longer welcome in Africa, and the doormat has been pulled, and that it's locked in front of us. So no more Western powers in Africa. Now, how do we operate down there? We can't. We just simply that they have taken their continent back. Now we're going to have to pay full price for it. And I'll leave it there. I know I've been rambling, but anyway, please buy us a coffee. Civilization Cycle, buy me a coffee. Actually, buy us a double espresso if you like the content. If you think it's good content and something worthy of your time that you haven't heard somewhere else, please buy us a double espresso there. Buy me a coffee /Civilization Cycle. Now, Ransom, talking about Africa, I mean, I don't know a lot of people who are into the deep research of Africa, but they're already where I can envision us being in about 10 years of finally we're going to catch up to this biometric ID stuff, but they're there already.
Yeah, you would think the United States would maybe in the next year or two show up to the African nations and offer them very cheap infrastructure for water and agriculture and stuff instead of handing them crates of, old AK-47s and RPGs and things like that. We might have better relations with them, because that's kind of the thing we've done in the past. We gave them destabilization. If we offered them stabilization, then they might want to use the dollar with us. But however, you brought up Buy Me a Coffee. PayPal also auto converts your African money to US dollars. Just a reminder. But I thought we'd play a little game with the last 5 minutes or so here. Find the problem with the headline. Here we go. Oh, that was that Arctic Century.
Discovery is like a diamond. I can't see your full headline there. Hold on. I was trying to get some more comments popped up here. Let me see your headline. Okay, give us one of those and we'll read it out so everybody who's listening audio and not looking at us visually can see this.
Right. Everybody's worried about migration one way or another. Don't worry about it. Western nations we're taking care of it. We're taking ourselves out. The last thing that they need really to transfer an empire to a new place and a new system is to get rid of the core of the old empire, right? And the core of the old empire is the middle class in both China and the United States. So if they invest over there, guess what? It's bad news for the people that live in the country because they're going to reduce that population to move the empire. But on top of that, the Western world, 1,200% spike in vasectomy appointments. Okay,
that's a 12x increase for those of you with simple math. That's 12 times more people going for those appointments. Why is that?
Less people They want less people. They convince people to do it. Now you don't have to conquer them with an army. You can just make them trendy, and they'll off themselves. Evolutionary dead end. Here's another one I predicted. Not just priests. They're going to install AI Jesus. So AI is now officially divine. There it is. Is that the problem with this
That
headline?
sounds like a fallen angel to myself here. You know, that sounds like the fallen ones trying to come back and integrate humans into their plan to reconnect or try to overthrow God once again. That's exactly what that sounds like.
Here's our last two here, real quick. Canadian man jumps on a polar bear to defend his wife from attack. Why did it happen? Despite the increasing amount of ice in the Arctic, man-made climate change did it. That's why the bear attacked.
Hey, wait a second. The Canadian Ice Service, Canadian Ice Service had done that polar bear census, and they only covered half of the Arctic because they weren't over on the Russian side. They found 25,000 polar bears on the last census, and that's from the Canadian Ice Service for anybody who wants to do any more research. But in the 1970s, there were only 5,000 polar bears.
So you win. It wasn't climate change.
In polar bear population, even though they're telling you they're not. But that is directly from the Canadian Ice Service.
And that's why polar bears.
That's not the Russian side.
That's why the polar bears are eating people, because there's more of them.
They're running out of habitat.
Okay. And here's the last one. Merry Christmas. Michigan Attorney General urges residents to play music outside to combat Christmas porch pirates. Wait till all of your food is delivered.
Well, why would you play music outside to combat porch pirates? What does that mean? Like play music so they think you're home?
Yeah, it's completely silly and avoids the point that there's such a problem in the economy and the way people act that you can't have stuff delivered. It's stolen. Merry Christmas. Watch your packages.
Gonna watch my package take a walk. Buy me a coffee with a double espresso. Please remember civilizationcycle.com. Sign up for the show notes. Ransom, thank you for joining me tonight. Sweet. If you liked our conversations, please support our broadcast here, Civilization Cycle. We'll see you next week.